Hi students, in this video I'll be going through the 2014 O-Level Paper 2 question 9 part 2. Alright, so for this question we are asked to sketch on the same axis for x between 0 and 120 degrees the graph of y equals to 3/2 cosine 6x plus 1 and y equals to 2 minus half sine 3x. Alright, so let's sketch the first graph. Okay. Uh, so basically what we'll do is I always like to label the y-axis first. Okay, so you can see I've drawn a lot of these dotted lines. So later on you will see that these dotted lines they serve a purpose. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look over here. Okay, usually I like to start with this value over here. Okay, so this is the vertical shift of the graph, also meaning the central point of this graph. Okay, so I'm going to let this dotted line here be 1. Okay, so this dotted line represents the level 1, and it's also the vertical shift and the central point of this first graph, 3/2 cosine 6x plus 1. Okay, then over here we have the amplitude. So the amplitude is 1.5. Okay, so from this central point 1, I add 1.5. That will give me the maximum point of this first graph. So 1 plus 1.5, this will be 2.5. Okay, then to calculate the minimum point, 1 minus 1.5, that will give me negative 0.5. Okay, so I set up the central point, the lowest point, the minimum point, and the maximum point. Okay, the next one to study will be the period. So this number here is 6. So to calculate the period for this first graph, okay, we will take 360, okay, divided by 6. So that will give us 60. Okay, so the period for this first graph will be 60, meaning that from 0 to 60 degree, you will see one complete cosine graph. Then from 60 to 120, you will see the second cosine graph. Okay, so I'm going to divide this segment into 2. Okay, so here to here is 60, and then try to measure the same length out. So over to here will be 120. Okay, so for each complete graph from 0 to 60, okay, I'm now going to divide it into 4 equal parts. Okay, so here, here, and here. So for you, if you are drawing on a paper, okay, go and use your ruler and try to make these lengths the same. Okay, so each interval, maybe you can use like 1 cm, 1 cm, 1 cm. So from 0 to 60 will be 4 cm. Okay, so here will be 30, 15. And then over here will be 45. Okay, then over here will be 75, 90, and then 90 plus 105. Okay. Okay, so we label already. Okay, so how does a cosine graph? This is a positive cosine graph. So positive cosine graph will look like this, right? Okay, so it will start from the maximum point, and then this one I call it the rest point. Okay, why rest? Because I treat this like the central point. It's the undisturbed point. Let's say like water. You don't disturb it, so the water is at a particular level. Once you start to disturb, it starts to oscillate up and down to the maximum and then to the minimum. Okay, so I always use the letter R. Okay, then in next one, it will go down to the minimum, then it goes back to the rest, and then goes back to maximum. Okay, so cosine graph has this shape, positive cosine graph. Max, rest, minimum, rest, and max. Okay, so the max will be 2.5, so at 0, it starts 2.5. Then at the first important point, the 15 degree, it goes to the rest point. Then at 30, it goes to the minimum. Okay, then at 45, it goes back to rest. Okay, then after that at 60, it goes up to the maximum. Okay, so we can actually sketch the first graph now. So the cosine graph will look like this. Okay, so try to make all these parts rounded now. Okay. Okay, so this part is not that nice. Let me re-sketch it. Okay. Okay, then after that, the pattern will continue. After maximum, okay, at 75 goes back to rest. Okay, then at 90 goes to the minimum. 105 goes back to rest. And then 120, it goes back to the next maximum. Okay, so let's continue the sketch. Okay, so on paper you will be able to make it nicer lah. Okay, it's easier to control the drawing, the lines on the paper. Okay, so it will look something like this. Okay, so this brown graph will be y equals to 3 over 2 cosine 6x plus 1. Okay, so I'm going to change the color of my pen to blue. Okay, so now let's draw the second graph now. Okay, so for the second graph, the central point, okay, the central point will be at 2. Okay, the vertical shift. Okay, so this is 1. Okay, so this will be 2. Okay. Okay, the amplitude over here is just 0.5. So 2 plus 0.5, so the maximum will be 2.5. Okay, then 2 minus 0.5, 1.5. Okay, so this is a rather narrow graph. Okay, the central point is at 2, the minimum is 1.5, the maximum is at 2.5. Okay, over here, we have 3. Okay, so the period for this graph will be 360 divided by 3 will be 120. Okay, which means that from 0 to 120, I should only see one complete sine graph. Okay, so meaning the important points for this graph are from 120, I'll divide into 4 parts, right? So it will be 30, 60, and 90. So it will not involve the 15, 45, 75, and 105. Right, so one thing to notice, this is a negative sine graph. Okay, so it's a negative sine graph. Negative half sine 3x, right? So positive sine graph, okay, positive sine graph will look like this. So negative sine graph will just be the opposite shape, like that. So this is negative sine graph. Okay, so negative sine graph will start from, so this will be the central point. Okay, we'll start from the rest, but it will go to the minimum first, then go back to rest, then go back to maximum, then go to maximum, and then go back to rest. So the pattern is rest, minimum, rest, maximum, and then go back to rest. Right? So remember now the central point is at 2 for this graph. Okay, so we should start drawing. It goes from rest here. Okay, then goes to the minimum. So minimum will be at 30. So the 31 point. So go up here. So here. Okay. Then after that at 60, it goes back to the central point or the rest point. Okay, then at 90, it goes to the maximum. Then at 120, it will go back to the rest point. Okay, so now we can sketch. Okay, so this will be a very narrow graph. Okay, so like that. Like this. Go here. And then go to here. Okay, so just like this. Alright. So the blue one will be the second graph, and then the brown line will be the first graph. Okay, let me redraw this last part. Don't look too nice. Okay, okay. Okay, so negative sine graph for the blue one, and then the brown one is for the 3 over 2 cosine 6x plus 1. Okay, so this is how we draw the trigo graph. Okay, first you set up the dotted lines. Okay, so dotted lines, the central one will be for the vertical shift. Okay, the central point of the graph. Then you mark out with another dotted line the maximum, and then another one below for the minimum. Okay, then after that you go and set up the x values. Right, so if the period is 60, you mark out 60, and from 0 to 60, you divide into 4 equal intervals. Okay, then from 60 to 120, another 4 equal intervals. Okay, then you need to, of course, need to know the shape of the graph. Okay, so that you can roughly plot those important points and then sketch the graph. Right, so this is how you deal with trigo graph.